everyone once again. I can see Suleiman has said hi to everyone. Maybe as a matter of, as a way of starting, maybe we can just, because I think we are at least 7 right now. I think maybe we can just do a quick round of introduction so that probably you can just know who is in the session. The idea around this session probably is to just have real conversations, and it's not a lecture in any way. So maybe we can just do a round. Maybe we can start with Blaise, then Emma, then Gloria, then John, then Nahla. Welcome, Blaise.
Thank you. Is it kind of an introduction? Oh,
yeah. So you can just introduce yourself, what you do, and etc.
My name is Blaise. I work as a policy lead at Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, based in Accra, Ghana. And I'm interested in this because I previously worked as a startup co-founder in Accra, co-founded e-commerce startup, blockchain startup. And I've also networked with colleagues in East Africa. So I'm interested to see and to understand the work and progress, and basically have understanding of the great stuff you guys are doing across Africa. So this is an opportunity for me to also network and get to know colleagues across the continent. And so, yeah, I'm happy to be part and to, get to know more people and understand the ecosystem. Thank you.
It would have been good if you would enable your video at least so that we can see the face behind the voice.
Okay, I'll do that very soon.
We can go to Emma. Emma, are you there? Either Emma, if you're trying to speak, you're on mute. If not, then we can go to John Zera. Then we can cycle back to Emma once she's back.
Yes. So my name is John Zera from Arusha, Tanzania. I'm the executive director of Twende Social Innovation Center. We provide a makerspace, but we do creativity in terms of hardware innovation, and we enable our innovators to become entrepreneurs. In this session today, I just saw it in the PADA group in WhatsApp, and I thought it would be beneficial for me because most of our innovators are working with starting up, and their innovations and technologies are budding up into businesses. So I thought this would be a better platform for me to network and see how I can learn from others, if I can be of any help, and if at all there's a way I can also benefit from this. Thank you. I'll turn my video on when I switch to laptop mode. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We can go to Nahla.
Hi, this is Nahla Suleiman. I'm president of the Critical Care Nurses Association, registered in the African Union and World Federation. I'm one of the founder and team who established the COVID-19 Isolation and Treatment Center in Sudan, and I'm a TOT for COVID-19, case management and IPC, and the vaccination TOT. Regarding the health sector, for any issues regarding the technology, artificial intelligence, this is why I love to join the system, and then we see how we can benefit from other and benefit from us too. Sudan.
Thank you very much for that very nice introduction. I think just from the introduction, I can see we have a real mix of different practitioners in the region. Maybe just to start us off, maybe we'll break down this conversation into two. Number one is I will give a synopsis or a state of play of the East Africa community in terms of the current state of play in terms of integration. Then once we do that, then I can open it up for conversation, I think, and this would be led by my colleague Sheila, who is also in the call. So if you allow me, I'll start by sharing my screen. I'm told that there's someone who's not introduced. Gloria? It seems Gloria is also quiet. Maybe she'll introduce herself as we continue with the conversation. So let me share my screen. Sorry. Just give me a sec. Sheila, I think maybe it would be nice also to just for Sheila to introduce herself. I had assumed that she would introduce herself as we go to the second session, but I think since we're in the mood of introduction, I think maybe Sheila can just say a word or two in terms of introduction.
So good morning, everybody. My name is Sheila. I am from, and I think there's a bit of feedback on my side. I don't know if it's just me. Okay. I'm from Kenya, and I have been involved in the innovation and entrepreneurship space for the past 13 years. I sit in several boards. I've also worked in policies, especially startup policies across Africa, involved in the Senegal one, involved in the Kenyan one, involved in 13 other countries through the Africa Innovation Policy Task Force. I also work directly with startups through Founders Institute in Nairobi. Worked with iHub for 10 years, and I currently also run an investment and innovation management consultancy in Nairobi called The Code. We work with different players, especially entrepreneur support organizations across the continent. I am so delighted to be here, specifically because this is a meeting that was very targeted. It's not, we're not expecting a lot of people, because we want to understand the business environment and ease of doing business across the region, but more importantly, how we can help players within the region to be able to scale, and other players who are looking into plug into this region to look at opportunities within the region and easily, especially policy-wise or regulation-wise, easily plug their businesses here. So I'm super excited to be here and looking forward to a good meeting. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sheila. And I'm sorry, I don't know, someone, I think even Blaise reminded me that Sheila needed to introduce herself. So thank you very much for that. Also, I think as a way of introduction, I think I also started off immediately. So my name is Victor Otieno. I'm the managing director of a consultancy and research firm called Vifa Consult, based in Nairobi, Kenya. Our focus basically is supporting both startups, SMEs, as well as entrepreneurship support organization through using data as a way of directing the kind of interventions that the different ESOs have towards SMEs and startups. So part of our work is really policy conversations using data and using research. So as a way of introduction also, this initiative is a partnership between both VIFA as well as the court, which is headed by Sheila. So because both of us are very much involved in policy conversations across Kenya as well as the region and even Africa as well, we thought it would be nice to start having those conversations around integrating innovation into national conversations that are geared towards socioeconomic development. I'll share my screen now. So the conversation that we are having is around the East Africa community startup ecosystem and how we can be able to integrate this community or this ecosystem into the broader conversation around the East African community. And of course, I'm very glad that we have representation from Ghana because one of the things we want to come out of this session is for the conversation to continue across the different economic trading blocks, whether be it ECOWAS, SEDC, EAC, etc. And finally, we hope that we can be able to have an African-wide or a continental conversation around the role of innovation towards socioeconomic development of the continent. So before we could get there, we thought it would be nice just to start at home where we are in East Africa, then cascade that conversation to the different trading blocks. So even as we finish this, I'm sure we will be having we shall be reaching out to the different other trading blocks for them to have similar conversations, and probably at some point, maybe in the course of the year or next year or whatever, as long as we agree, we can be able to have a continental conversation around, the innovation ecosystem and how well it's integrated into your traditional economic structure. So the series is, of course, is around is a conversation around how can we make it work. And we've already had, it's a 3-part series, and we've already had one conversation which we had last week, where we brought together different ESOs. These are the entrepreneurship support organizations in East Africa. And we had conversation around how can we be able to work together as entrepreneurship support organizations? How can we be able to support startups better? So the second phase, which we are currently which we are doing today, is a conversation around startups. Sorry, technology usually decides to play games whenever you need it most. So the East Africa community, of course, started in 1993, where we had what is called the Tripartite Commission, which brought Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda as the forerunners towards the broader integration of the EAC community. And the EAC community, as currently constituted, was established in the year 2000. As you can see on your screen, these are the different milestones that the community has grown with towards over the years. But I think one of the major milestones that was there or is there is the common markets, which took place in 2010. So this was the agreement for the community to be able to aggregate the entire market and allow for free movement of goods, labor, etc., with no charging of customs as you moved your goods from one country to the next. So that was a major milestone towards the community. Of course, again in 2010, there was what was called the Common External Tariff, on imports from third party countries, where raw materials being imported, raw materials moving from one country to the next would have zero charge in terms of either duty or any other tax. So the idea around having the common markets was to just allow entrepreneurs within the region to be able to access different markets across the different East EAC countries with very little blockades or bottlenecks. So that, I think, was very important. So the whole idea around having a common markets protocol, as I've explained, is to spur growth not only within each country, but also the East Africa community at large. Having a common market also enables the East African region to be competitive, given that we can be able to negotiate and have policy conversations with different trading blocks as a block, so that now any partner who would want to come and work or trade with East Africa, it meant that they can be able to access the 134 million population at a go. So that was and continues to be very, very important. But even as we discuss that, the question that comes to mind is there a space, or is there an opportunity for the innovation community to be integrated into the process? So what we did is we did a study of the EAC industry policy to see, because this is now the strategic document that guides the trade within EAC, and we just wanted to find out what are the drivers, which sectors are driving this particular strategy. And one of the things that we notice is that the innovation community is not ideally addressed. The industrial policy focuses on natural resources that is there within the community, and it tries or espouses to unlock that potential in terms of natural resources. Of course, this is very much linked to manufacturing. So how can we be able to use the resources that we have, natural resources that we have, to of course enable manufacturing, and hence be able to create goods and services that can be consumed within the region. This is around an estimated population of 134 million people in the region. So that's the current focus of the policy document. Yet, if you look at Global Innovation Index, as well as other organizations that focus on innovation, it gives you, for the last 5 years, we can see that East Africa, Kenya, leading the way in the region, is really getting a lot of output in terms of innovation. If you look at the 2020 index of the Global Innovation Index, Kenya is number 3 behind South Africa and Egypt, which tells you something. So it means that we need to start having conversations around how can we be able to add this ecosystem towards the growth of the region and the different countries. So of course, if you look at the broader picture in terms of the continent, we've seen other nations identify and see the potential of startups, of innovation and innovation driven by startups. And we've seen countries such as Senegal, Tunisia. I know Ghana is in the process. I think we had a conversation last year with with different countries that are considering establishing a startup act. We know Rwanda is also in the process. Kenya is, both myself and Sheila, and the National Task Force that is mandated to work through establishment of a startup act in Kenya. I know Tanzania is also in the process of doing that. So different countries have realized and have seen the potential of innovation as driven by startups. But again, if you look at the strategic document of the different nations as well as the region, it's not been articulated very clearly. So these conversations that we are having should spur conversations that should be able to lead towards policy or legislative action to ensure that the innovation community or the innovation ecosystem is included. So there are 2 levels that we are looking at. Number one is we are not in any way trying to interfere with current plans around innovation within each country. So that can continue to happen. And as I've mentioned, different countries within the region are developing startup legislation based and interpreting it based on their felt challenges and felt needs. And I remember even having conversations last year where I think we had conversation around, the different startup bills that are in the different countries. We could even see from that conversation that even the definition of startups for each country was almost very different, in the sense that can you hear me? Could you confirm we had a slight glitch in terms of electricity? Yeah, so different countries are enacting startup or innovation legislation. And again, it might vary from one country to the next. What we're saying is we're not in any way saying that you should stop that. That can continue. But for the region, I think, and if you look at the policy, industrialization policy blueprint for the East African region, there is an opportunity for the community to collaborate on sectors that has a wide bearing, or a sector or a subsector that has a value chain that can be exploited for the benefit of the entire region. So one, innovation and ICT and startup is one of those sectors that is very strategic, and we can be able to reap benefit across the region. So it is at this level that we started this conversation, where we were asking ourselves, how can the region collaborate, not at a political level, but at a community level? How can we be able to collaborate, and how can we be able to enshrine this in the strategic document of in the wider strategic document of the EAC? So this is the thrust or the impetus behind this kind of conversation, and what we agreed on is to have it in three parts. Have conversations for the startup ESOs, or startup entrepreneurship support organizations, because they have a different perspective, or that would differ from startups as well as investors, and have those pockets of conversations, and maybe have a culminating document that we can be able to jointly say, this is what we co-developed, and probably we can just be able to use this kind of conversations to spur broader conversations with policy and legislative organs in the region, as well as at a national level. So for this session, we are focusing around startups, the startup journey, the experiences around investment, the legislative bottlenecks that are there, and probably just be able to pick those nuggets of wisdom from each one of you, and probably incorporate it into the wider document, and then we can be able to share across the different platforms that we are in, and hopefully we can be able to have proper policy and legislative conversations for the benefit of startups. So that's it. As I mentioned, it's a three-part series. We really appreciate your presence, and you taking time to come and have this conversation. And basically, these are the objectives. Is not the way we've structured the conversation is semi-structured, in the sense that you don't have to give a presentation of sorts. You can just be able to share based on your own experience. That's it, I think, from me. I would open it up to Sheila. I'll hand it over to Sheila, who can be able now to just facilitate the conversation moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victor. So what we will do is we will talk to different players in each country. You can talk on your experience on, the ease of doing business. You can talk about, starting business, the business environment in your country, understanding of different regulations and policies within your country, especially if you're a startup, how that has been, how it was if you started a while back. And then I will also give a bit of context around the different countries in East Africa and the policy environment based on my understanding. So currently in Kenya, I think the biggest loophole that we have in the country, or the biggest hurdle that we have for entrepreneurs, of course, is taxes. I think that keeps changing from time to time. You know, COVID and the pandemic notwithstanding, I think the introduction of a number of new taxes, the sales tax, the digital tax, something that I think we'll keep seeing in a number of countries across the globe. It's the new trend, especially for digital tax. And I think also ease of access to government services. That I think, especially on starting business in Kenya, that has been sorted. So it's easy for someone to register. We have an e-citizen portal where you can do registration, and they've even already put like articles of memorandum in the portal. You can literally adapt the different documents that you need to register a business and register it and get your certificate within a day. You can also, after doing that registration, you can register for your PIN as a business yourself. You don't have to contact anyone to do that. But if you have co-founders, I think it's slightly different, unless you have an agreement on the side. You have to look at the director's agreement on, I think, shareholding and distribution of the same. And then you can upload those documents and it can be verified and you can register business. In terms of filing for a tax, that has also been made slightly easy in the country. We know when you're supposed to have paid VAT. We know when you're supposed to have paid pay, and for the companies as well. And you can file for your returns online. So a lot of these processes have been digitized, which makes some of these processes slightly easier. However, the business environment offline is not as easy, because we still have, logistical issues. We still have sometimes corruption, especially when dealing with specific entities that I will not mention. And so those are some of the challenges that I feel entrepreneurs go through. But also, there are policies that have been put in place, for instance, saying, 30% of people who should be supplying to government, for instance, should be youth. But when you talk to people on the ground, most of them say they still don't have access to tenders. I think one of the biggest challenge with this is because there's just lack of information on how to tender. So people assume it's just, the way you send proposals, but, there are several things you have to have in place, and especially compliance-wise, for you to be able to work with government. And if you don't have those things in place, especially for startups, most of them might not have those things in place already, which makes it slightly difficult for people to be able to work with government. And so because of that, it becomes a huge challenge if one of the potentially, Nal, I'll come to you, one of the potentially largest clients that anyone could have is not working with the industry. So I think we will discuss in depth more challenges that people face, but also we'll discuss good things that, policy-wise is happening in the different countries that we're in. Nahla, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, and thanks, Victor, for the presentation. As you know, the Sudan now in the transitional state, and before, over the last 30 years, any business was being running, there is more corruptions, and the nation, the community, they are not happy, and they have to find out many issues. But as I'm happy now for your ecosystem policy, because I do believe that you are planning to have a startup in the right way, because in the business, when you say startup, everybody will think that in a business management world, that is still the newborn stage, which is good. Now, my concern to you that I think your plan for ecosystem in Africa or East Africa or all Africa as a whole is going to make a different change, because if you come now and you call the Ministry of Investment in Sudan right away, you will not find the stage of start up a business in this time. You have many factories ongoing, many things, but that is not the standard. So my concern to you for this policy, as you are consultants in policy, is going to make a change. So I would like you to put it into consideration, because we have many issues, like some business owner got a land and start a manufacture on that land, for example. But when you come back to the nation that it is owning to the group of community residents, and they're traditional, we say, no, this is my own land. You know that what I mean? So like this point, it should be into consideration before start the agreements. But I do understand that my country will benefit from your ecosystem, because you are going to build for us the right way to track. You are going to support us in changing the 30 years back of our corrupting political leaders' problems, you know? So I'm very happy that I attend this webinar with you now. It's going to be a startup, really. It is going to be the real startup for our what we need in Africa. And thank you very much, dear.
Thank you so much. I know a number of players in the Sudan ecosystem, and last year they were having conversations around a startup act, just the year before, just before the revolution. There's a hub in Sudan, I think you know, Impact Hub Khartoum. We've been working with entrepreneurs for a long time. There's also Savannah Innovation Hubs, which is also in Khartoum, and they've started working with startups, and they're having small discussions around policy and how they can make the business environment, even if it's not at policy level, at grassroots level, to enable more entrepreneurs start businesses, which types of businesses, how to get access to funding, but also access the other regional markets, especially in North Africa. And I'm really delighted that you've joined us in this discussion today. Emma, I see your hand. Please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. I think I wanted to make 3 comments based on what we've discussed this morning. The first one is, for me, maybe I talk a little bit about myself. My company, Emma's Knoll, is barely 1 year old. My background is in logistics and supply chain management. I worked for a French international firm for about 20 years in all areas. The only thing I didn't become was the MD. So I left last year. So and I decided to stay in the industry, and that is how I ended up registering this company. I heard Sheila mention something about the ease of doing business, and I just wanted to comment about that. And indeed, I read a lot about the ease of doing business in Kenya having become better over time. And just in my experience in the last 3 months, I've been wondering, so how bad was it before? Because other than the issues of corruption, especially in the industry that I am in, and I won't mention the specific organizations involved. The other thing is that even for somebody like me with a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, even dealing with some of these bodies, there's still a lot you find yourself not knowing, and not even knowing how to approach when you have issues. And for example, there was mention about it's easy to register a company. Indeed, it's easy to register a company, but because But after you register a company, then what? People don't know what to do after that. In terms of when you're talking about compliance and all that, and I attended a compliance training actually with the KRA, people don't know. And I can tell you, for me, when I was filing my returns, what did I find? That I didn't file payee returns, and I'm thinking, but I had not worked. I haven't done any work. I haven't employed anybody. Only to find there is payee returns you have to file every month. I incurred a penalty, and this is what I'm saying. So you've registered a company. What do you do with it thereafter? Those things, when you talk about compliance and how people at some point are driven to, paying little monies here and there to sort, whatever problems they imagine they have, because they don't have knowledge that you can also sort them out the proper way without having to bribe anybody. You find there are those ones. There's also the returns with the registrar of companies. You've registered, yes, but do you know how to do those things, or that it's required? You understand what I'm saying? So it's easy. Yes, you can do these things online, some of them, if you have the knowledge. But then after that, what you need to do to comply so that you're able to get whether it's those government tenders, which I would not even touch because the government doesn't pay anyway on time, there is that. The compliance bit, how you go about complying. In Kenya, compliance is very expensive. I'm sorry to say that, because just based on my 3 months when I decided, unfortunately I got COVID, so for a while I didn't do anything. So this is the time I'm starting to put meat in my company so that I start operations. And you just find even getting permits and all these things, it's work. So, but then the goodness is, and this we've been told a lot in Kenya, there is a lot of good people, a lot of knowledgeable people who want to stick within the straight and the narrow. And those guys, again, one needs to know them. They need to come out and say, I do clean business, and this is how I can support you as a startup. I can support you as a startup, as somebody who wants to comply. And of course, again, as a startup, you have to be ready to pay. Yes, the charges are there, but they are worth paying if you want to comply. So the ease of doing business is there, yes, but I don't know how it was before. Finally, there is also the element of, I've heard of everybody is talking about innovation, digital this, digital that. And sometimes I'm starting to wonder, in my industry, everybody, my industry has got a lot of players. It's from KRA to the shipping companies, to transport, to the standard bodies, to everybody. I mean, every regulatory body is involved. And everybody talks about, digital this, digital that, and etc. But all these innovations, or whatever you want to call them, they sort of like don't gel together to make sense to a startup. So you are not dealing with, I don't know, you get this app, you get the other app, then you try this, then you try that. And then at the end of the day, it's almost like you've got an overload of information that it's not practical, it's not usefully practical to what you want to achieve, and especially in my industry. But there it is. And now, sorry, the other thing I wanted to mention is in terms of how do you run your business? For instance, if you look at it, you want to get a partner. If I get a partner from Ghana, what does the taxation say? Taxation in Kenya is convoluted. I mean, it's convoluted. I sat with my auditor, I was wondering, I don't know which tax, I don't know VAT. I'm thinking, all right, I mean, this thing is a full-time job. This taxation thing, I think Sheila mentioned, the taxation is convoluted. So as we think, as we think policy and all that, I would plead, or I would hope that at some point, some word will get out there to whether it's a policy making mandarins or whoever it is that, you know, things still, there's a lot to be done to make sure that even doing business is easy. I shouldn't be struggling or getting very afraid about taxation. I should be happy to pay taxes. However, it's convoluted. Yeah, so that is what I wanted. I just wanted to say.
Thank you so much, Emma. I actually can relate with what you're saying. Running a business, you know, the registration part, ease of registering a business is quite easy in Kenya. But beyond that, but also even there, a lot of people don't have information because there are a number of taxes you register, especially when you're registering for your PIN, that, you know, when you don't have adequate information, you end up paying a lot of money because you registered the wrong thing. So there's for sure a lack of at least user. Let's call ourselves users of these services that government is providing. We don't have adequate information to be able to make informed decisions around it. And so, yes, I absolutely understand what you're saying. I think we can go to John. Maybe you can tell us about the situation in Tanzania.
Yes, I would say that I've dealt with startups and I've been in platforms where I've had and listened to what's going on. A major challenge in Tanzania, just like how it is in other countries, I think we are a bit behind in terms of having a union, first of all, of the startup. Just this recently, we've had the Tanzania Startup Association working with us, trying to map along who will work with what and how are we going to deal, knowing the key role players. And taxes, yes, have been an issue to startups, but it's not, right now, it's not our cry. Our cry mostly is the hands to hold that. You know, the system itself is not well defined, knowing that who will help out with what. Then the other issue would come now into the taxes now. Some would be charged. Then the side of the taxes is that sometimes the taxes could not be burdensome, but we don't have the education of the right taxes. How should we pay this? When should we pay it? Who am I supposed to pay to? All that, and the know-how. So I'd say it's a bit different from Tanzania. We're trying to learn from other countries, say Kenya, in terms of the innovation ecosystem and startups. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Let's see. Please, maybe you can just tell us a bit about the environment in Ghana and what, especially when you're running the business, how you know, what you would say about the policy environment. I know a lot has changed in the ecosystem. I know currently the Association of Hubs in Ghana and different ecosystem players are looking into a startup act, but how was it for you?
Thank you, Emma. And very interesting submissions from different people. I must say this has been interesting and educative. In the case of Ghana, we have seen a mix of actions, but I would say knee-jerk approaches to startup ecosystem and building ecosystem and policy. And yes, as Emma said, we've also seen things like we are digitizing business registrations, making it easy. But my experience is even sometimes as somebody who has founded 2 companies, when I have to register a company again, it is just tough, and you can get all the forms and fill, and the forms keep changing. In the case of Ghana, in the space of 3 years, they have changed the forms you need to fill in registering the company, and that just makes like the process tough for most people. And I also think that we have significantly, and across Africa, still a digital literacy gap. And so as we
sing the song about digitizing all these processes? Do we factor in the people in the informal sector who probably cannot read and write or cannot, use all these digital tools? How do they register businesses? And I think these are some of the reasons that account for the increase in corruption in registering some of these businesses, or the delays. I don't know about Kenya, if you have them in local languages, but in Ghana, it is not possible exactly. And so how do we still get all these individuals to understand all the technical jargons and the legal jargons and register their businesses easily? So sometimes they probably have to still pay somebody to make these things work for them. Number two, I also see a situation where startup policies are made in a way to apply to every sector and every business, but it doesn't work that way. So in Ghana, one law that we have had concerns with as tech startup founders has been the fact that every investor need to put in, I think, at least 200,000 in a local startup. Sorry, $200,000. So that's the minimum startup capital investment. And it's a law that, scares away some investors or who want to come into Ghana and do business. I think so. Or is it if you want to start a local business? And you see, we think that we should disaggregate these laws and let them apply differently to other companies. So just like a bit of background, the policy was to stop foreigners from doing some retail businesses in the country. So the law was passed that if you want to start a retail business in Ghana, you need a startup capital of not less than $200,000 or so. But then that was like a broader law that applied to all startups. But then tech startups, as we know, you can have somebody come in and partner with a local, and you need something just like $20,000 to kickstart the business, because tech startups are not capital intensive. And this creates like a problem and a challenge sometimes for some investors that are willing to come in. And so we should make laws that are applicable to different business categories and sectors as well. Then I look at the ecosystem. I usually build a taxonomy for the startup ecosystem as made up of different actors. These actors include the startups themselves, of course, businesses. We are looking at governments, NGOs, civil societies, and then what I call the enablers. So we're looking at incubators, hubs, and accelerators. And governments don't play a good role in this space. And in Africa, we've seen the emergence of startups and investors or enablers like the incubators. But how well do we bring in government to support all these people to provide the best ecosystem for everybody? And so if you look at the enablers could be one of the areas to solve this. And the problem Emma encountered, we had it solved because my previous startup was in a startup, incubator. And so we had more like legal persons who would help us go through some of these things. So they will hire accountants, lawyers, and all the experts to help us navigate all these complex business environment. And so how do we transcend that into the non-tech sector? And I guess maybe that could help people like startups like Emma solve or overcome the frustrations they face. Because in their case, it's probably like traditional logistics and supply with very little tech component. But can we have maybe business hubs and incubators for non-tech startups in the case of Emma, where she can also be a member and enjoy some of these services and learn in the process. So over time, I've learned in the process with my over 10 years experience in the startup. I know some of the laws, the taxes I need to pay, how to go around them, or how to maybe file and do all these things. So that's a way we can also an approach that can bring everybody on board and not just focus on only the tech sector. And let me conclude by saying that I would also like us to broaden the scope to looking at cross-border business or business environment and ecosystem, and build that network. So if there's something in EAC, ECOWAS, how do we build these laws and have like a common agreement and make it easy for a Ghanaian who has a business partner in Kenya, Tanzania, to be able to solve the tax issues easily? because talent is spread across, and one country, businesses in one country often lack the absorptive capacity or the ability to hire the skill set locally, and you may have to get that, you know, across border. And so how do we make that easy for continent-wide business ownership and being able to drive innovation? And so I share in the challenges encountered on like, you know, discussed here. And I also think that we need to solve the information asymmetry and make it easy for everybody to have information, whether it's in the local dialect or just a way they can understand and be able to go around the business environment. As for doing business with government, I've never thought about it, and I don't want to do it, as the problems are just too many. Either your capital is locked up, so much corruption to get a contract. Yeah, it's something startups really shouldn't venture. Maybe unless you become a big organization and you have the resources to spare, then you can maybe take on government as a client. Thank you.
So much, Blaise. I think you've raised some really key points on investment, but also I think cross-border regulation environment, especially when you're scaling business. And I think that's something we can discuss. I know we don't have a lot of time, but maybe we can discuss the fundraising bit, which you mentioned. I think on the investor side, we'll have an investment session next week where investors will tell us from their side. But I think I'd also like to hear from the players in this meeting. How has it been for you if you've tried to fundraise, and what challenges have you encountered, if any, or which ones have you heard of while fundraising? So I'll start with Nala. I see your hand. You can go first, and then we'll come to Emma and then John.
Okay, thank you. I have two suggestions. My first suggestion to be as a recommendation that I think the system will be working well if anyone who wants to start business in any countries or even their countries, that to be referred by you, by your ecosystem, because your ecosystem is the framework. So as Elise mentioned and Emma mentioned, the governments in each country have the political issues always block the start business for the personnel. So my recommendation will be like, you will be the higher authority, and then you can be supported from African Union, because African Union like is controlling each country inside Africa. So through that system, still we need that to be implemented in each country. So I'm talking mainly personally of my country. I think that is going to help, you know, because you give them the guidelines, they know the protocol, they know the policy, then they have to understand this business person referred by you. That means they have to consider that the chapter they have, it should be there. So it will minimize what Emma faced. It will support what Elise talk say. So I will be very happy if that is going to be started, because I'm thinking to do many business, but I cannot do like a junk business, you know. I will be stuck somewhere, and then I will think, okay. Regarding the fundraise issue, there is many UN organization will support innovative projects. So I think fundraising will be there, but also through you, I think it's going to be control body, because everybody will tell you, okay, do you have for us any project that personnel will run for us to do this in that country? We have this such amount of money. I think it's going to be under your control. Wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those suggestions. Emma?
I think for me, it's to start with, when you look at how, okay, so how do you get funding? Okay, you can get yourself a director, an additional director, or I don't know, borrow money or whatever. But I want to talk about the issue of getting a director. In my industry, which is logistics, in Kenya it's known to have one of, I don't know, corruption thrives there for various reasons. And it's easy to find yourself in a situation whereby somebody wants to fund you because there is something they want to achieve, facilitate you or whatever, get a tender or a job, and especially with the government. And then you find yourself at the end of the day, you are in a very tricky situation, because you find if they help you, somehow they have a way of getting the money paid very quickly. And but you see, that sort of facilitation is just dodgy. Yes, you've got a contract, you've got this, you've been paid very quickly, but how is this whole thing working? And so after looking, and again, after thinking about it, then, as people will advise you, just don't touch these guys. So you find like for me now, I'm the only director and I don't know whether I'll get another one. The other way is when you think about, you hear there is all this funding for women, and I don't know, women businesses, women-led businesses and things like that. And that I don't know, it's information for me that I find is up in the air. And when you finally get some additional info about it, then you find those guys who started ahead of you, they are more in control of that whole funding business. And maybe you may not qualify. How do you write a very good proposal and spice it up a little bit so that you get this funding? So it's, for me, funding has been a bit of an issue. The luck that I have, if I may say so, is that I have some small funds somewhere which I had committed to starting this business. But I know at some point I'll require funding. When you talk about banks lending money, yes, yesterday I had a discussion with a bank and I found out it's easy for them to lend me money as an individual as opposed to my company. And I asked, why would it be like that? I found it weird. So sourcing for funding is for me I think it's going to be like it's going to be a challenge in itself, but I'm prepared because I'm aware of what I don't want. And it's to get a director on board or get some dodgy partnership so that I get a big tender. I want to stick to the straight and the narrow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emma. John, would you like to contribute to that?
Yes, I'd like to contribute to that.
Officer,
but
is this
only
attacking?
on my experience.
Yeah, that's why Ndiosi Jatoka.
What we are dealing with, as I said, we're an innovation center. So I'll first say how it is currently, the fundraising situation, the challenges we are going through, and maybe if we could go back to what you asked. So the first thing would be currently fundraising for us is a challenge, just like any other. For us, we are an innovation hub. So we get these opportunities, but you find when people define innovation for our side, we could be less privileged because we are not doing digital innovation. We deal with the people who don't even have access to electricity to begin with. And sometimes it's a bit challenging because when they want to support innovators, they focus on the digital innovators, someone in fintech or the like. So it's hard for us to fundraise to enable the projects that we're currently doing to be sustainable. The other challenge I'd say in fundraising would be experts. I find that Tanzania we've tried to seek for experts in fundraising, and it's not as there's little or less competence when it comes to fundraising and people who can actually do that. So we rely mostly on volunteers, international volunteers, to help us do that. And it has been a challenge for us as an organization and for our innovators. And in-country fundraising is also an issue because of the philanthropic nature of Tanzanians that say we're not that philanthropic, we do not give back to charities as much as it's supposed to. Just so you know, we are a non-profit organization, but we help these innovators stay. So that is it on our end. And there's a question you asked, Sheila, about fundraising. What was it?
Yes.
Yes, the question was?
Oh, I was asking about the, sorry, let me, okay. There was feedback. I was asking about the fundraising environment in the country, especially from the startup side. How is it? Are there investors policy-wise? Is it easy? Because sometimes it's really difficult because of the policies in the country, like Blaise mentioned, for investors to put in money. And that's why you'll find sometimes a lot of startups in different countries would rather register in the US, in Madagascar, no, in Mauritius, instead of registering in their own countries because of such things. So how is that the environment for startups in terms of fundraising?
Yeah, so the environment for startups, I'd say yes. Two things. Based on what I know from the Tanzania Startup Association, what they said like 2 weeks ago, we had a meeting with them. They said that the channels are not well connected. You'd find they learned that the government has a lot of funds for startups, but there's no one proper channel to send it through, and you find most funds go back to the funders because they are not being utilized. So that shows that there's no proper channel or connection for these funds. When it comes to policies, I wouldn't say that the policies are that strict. It's that sometimes the right funds wouldn't go to the right beneficiary based on the, not bureaucracy, but the fact that the channels are not well streamlined. Thanks.
Thank you so much. We've been joined by Adamu. Maybe you can let us know where you're from. What you do, and yeah, go ahead, Adamu.
Good morning. I'm joining from Ghana. My name is Tumar Adam. I'm the Executive Director of ECHO Ghana. So I find it very interesting to join you. The Espada is East Africa. So I want to have more view and more knowledge of East African experience so that I can implement it or add more, information that we can use. Once we are in Africa, we can have West Africa and East African issues on ECHO. So I'm very glad to join you.
Thank you so much for joining us. John, there's John, did he leave? I think John Kevin, yeah, I think he left. So we'd like to conclude because we don't want to go way over time. We will share this with you. We will also compile all the feedback we got from this meeting. We have other subsequent meetings that the report will gather all these different discussions that we've had, and we will share that with you as well. Just to conclude, what would you say are your recommendations for what needs to be done to provide a better business environment in your countries, but also across the region for better integration and scaling of businesses, both in running a business, but also from an entrepreneur side? What should be done to allow more investors to be able to play in in your jurisdiction or within your region. So I'll start with Emma. I think Emma is still muted. So maybe we'll go to Nala first, and then we'll come back to Emma.
No, I'm back.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, I had, yeah.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I was saying that is just to the issue about the taxation. It's to be made easier. There are too many taxes, and we do not, as a startup or even the big businesses, they sometimes are a bit confusing. So which one do you register for? Which one don't you register for? And what does it mean if you don't register for it and all that? We know very well in Kenya that, our revenue body has got very, very, very stiff penalties. And that also, I believe, is what promotes, corruption. Because if by mistake you don't register tax because
Emma, we lost you. I think you muted.
the taxation process, not KRA, now the policy level, treasury and all that, so that we don't have 1,000 taxes that get so confusing. The third thing is that when a trader or when an entrepreneur, when a startup makes a mistake, where are how can they be helped to correct it without necessarily these guys walking around with a hammer to kill this guy? There is also the issue about knowledge, but I think that one is with us. I know personally I've had to go out of my way to look for knowledge. I'm a bit more I have an advantage in that I have a corporate background, so I'm finding it's easier to learn, but my heart still goes out to those guys who don't have as much knowledge and the problems they are going through. And thirdly, we talk about trade. I think trade was mentioned earlier, even whether it's within EAC or even when EFC, FTA comes up and stuff like that. But we talk a lot about goods. But, in terms of services, or there's very little that is mentioned about that. And especially the services that would support the movement of goods. Because I need to move goods from here to Ghana, I need that customs agency. How are these guys supported, first of all, in matters compliance, so that they comply all the time and all that? So services also need to come up in these discussions, not just about trade in goods, but the services that support the movement of those goods, and if it's labor laws and all those things. Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here, and I look forward to seeing, seeing the report. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emma, for those very concrete and insightful recommendation. We will go to Nala next.
Thank you, dear. I agree with Emma, all the points. And I need to add also the rest surface for the registration. It needs to be clear, and as still I'm insisting for you that the ecosystem has to initiate the guideline booklet, and that booklet has to have a copy in each Ministry of Investment. So it will be easier that, like, to miss, not to have many points of paying taxes and not knowledgeable for the situation. Plus, I would like also the ECO to have a plan for injecting the proposal planning in each business management school, in each university, because especially the graduates, those will be transfer and transform the knowledge to the community as well. They can go for research, graduation research, which will be more supportive to ecosystem for getting which area to start with it first. Thank you so much, dear.
Thank you so much, Nala. We'll go to Blaze.
For me, I want to see meaningful digitization. I think there's this buzzword going around that governments want to digitize the services, but it should, you know, be meaningful to people and actually help those, I would usually call the last mile business groups, to be able to understand what this process is. Number two, government should encourage or find or put in legislations that support enablers like hubs, incubators, and also investors to come in and provide capital. But also we should find ways to unlock local capital. I find it hard that local entrepreneurs, like, let me mention a popular one, maybe in Nigeria. I don't know if something like, but you said like take Dangote, which is more like the African icon. They don't invest in tech or local businesses. We've had that challenge. All they're interested in is building their conglomerates or their firms. But if governments can help through legislation to unlock local capital from local businessmen to invest in local startups, I think that would be great. We cannot continue to look to the West to come in and provide the funding. I think across Africa, I can say 90% of the investors are foreign. And yet we have local people who are running big companies, and each country has the equivalent of maybe the Dangote or rich businessmen. We should look at ways to bring them in and let them understand that once you have this money, channel it into, you know, sponsoring or investing in local talent and help grow the ecosystem. And I think I feel, let's say we should go back to the skills. We continue to say Africa has the skill boom and we have the engineers and everything, but there are still gaps. And sometimes when you go to the high end or the high end businesses, you find that you struggle to get the requisite skills, and where you find them, they're expensive for a startup. Because if a startup has to pay $2,000 to get a tech engineer, for me, that's a lot, because you're still starting a business, and the good ones, you pay that high for them. You go in for the low end or the entry-level developer, you train them. After 2-3 years, the big companies come to poach them. So that remains a problem for startups. And I faced that during my days. And so we should also work to solve these things. Lastly, equity don't work for most startup developers and startup people we want to employ. So they want cash, and that's the experience we have. Of late, you go to tell somebody, you want equity in a startup, and then you take low salary, we build it. No, they want cash. So that can we maybe make laws that, I don't know, ways to help make equity attractive. But apart from that, you know, getting the right talent for startups will remain a challenge. And as long as we don't have the money to hire them, then, you know, so can we then have like multinationals? So if MTN or Safaricom, there's a law that says if some of your engineers work with startups, like I'm sorry I'm using this example, but she is a single founder. Like somebody from Safaricom decides to work with Emma to grow her startup from maybe say ground zero to, let's say 50,000 in revenues. That employee in Safaricom maybe gets some tax breaks, they get a promotion, like these kind of things. We should find a way maybe to help to bridge that gap and get them in. Yeah, because there are many of the Emmas across Africa who are alone and want to do something, but you know, the environment is overwhelming. And if you have somebody from the corporate world who can help, they have the resources, they have the connections, and maybe the backing, and you know, they are not under any financial pressure, that can also, you know, help startups grow. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. John?
I have nothing to add on that, really, because
Great.
I just in the conversation and I did not know mostly what it is about. But yeah.
Thank you, John. So I think we will conclude with that because we've taken over 20 minutes of your time. And would like to really thank you for joining us for this discussion. As I've told you, we will have other subsequent meetings like this one to have similar discussion and to see how we can, at least encourage more collaboration across the region. But I think ensuring that there's ease of business for startups and SMEs across the region, for them to be able to access a larger market, for them to be able to scale their businesses across the East African region, but ultimately I think across Africa. So thank you so much for joining us. We will email you the report once we are done with it, maybe in 2 weeks' time. And yes, we look forward to engaging you further. Victor, do you have anything else to say?
Thank you very much again for availing yourselves. I think I would echo Sheila's comments around the same. I think also, as we mentioned, the idea is to have meaningful conversations and to broaden the conversations. And I'm very glad that we have representations from Ghana. I think maybe if you could reach out either through email, we can have conversations on how we can take the same conversation towards ECOWAS again, so that we can be able to share knowledge and probably be able to have this conversation cascaded or escalated to African Union. I think that would be awesome. Again, thank you very much for availing yourselves. We shall be able to share the recording of this conversation for your own information, as well as we subsequently will be able to share the report. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Thank you. Bye-bye.